Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How wonderful to see so many of you here. I would say on this beautiful morning, ho-ho, but I'm so sorry that we've got the wrong weather, but it's going to brighten up in a moment. And I'm Kate Mosse. I'm a writer and a playwright, and I have the great good fortune to do the pre- and post-show interviews here for Brilliant CFT, and it's an enormous pleasure to have Jeremy Sams here. Welcome back. Jeremy has the distinction of being the only person, did you know this?
No.
You don't know what I'm going to say, actually. The only person who once had a show on here in the main house, whilst directing a show in the Minerva that you'd also translated. Wow. So you are unique. You are the Guinness Book of Records for CFT. And now we're back for the hit of the summer, obviously. We all know it's going to be. I saw this last night and it is an utter joy. From start to finish, that sense of place, the enormous energy, your young cast, everything about it. It felt like, here we go, here comes Chichester summer. But can you just tell me a little bit about why this show now? You know, you are an orchestrator, you're a writer, you're a director, you're an adapter, you're a filmmaker, you're an opera, but you know, you have such enormous CV. But why did you want to do this show particularly now?
It's funny, I've always loved this piece. And about 2 years ago, I did a production of Peter Grimes at an opera house, Grange Park, you know Grange Park?
Yes.
And I got reviewed in the Telegraph, and the guy said, Jeremy Sams directs Peter Grimes like he'd much rather be directing Oklahoma. And I thought to myself, do you know what? He's absolutely right. I'd much rather be directing Oklahoma. And this is a piece very close to my heart. I'm very into musicals of all sorts, but this one is particularly special. For me, because many, many years ago, I was a piano player, and that was my full-time job. And one of my first jobs was as rehearsal piano on Oklahoma in the West End. It's like Alfred Molina was Judd. Who else was in it? Anyway, it's a really astonishing show, directed by Jamie Hammerstein. And I got very into Oklahoma and have loved it ever since, but never had the chance to work on it. And it's a really important piece because it's actually the beginning of the modern musical in many, many ways. And fascinating, the people who wrote it, Rodgers and Hammerstein, had between them about, 50 years, if not more, of experience writing musicals, but never with each other. So it's their first attempt to write together. And actually, what I get in this piece a lot is about beginnings.
Yes.
And that's one reason. Is another quotation about Oklahoma. Stephen Sondheim, another person I revere in many, many ways, said famously, Carousel is about life and death, but Oklahoma is about who goes to the box social. And I've always thought to myself, if ever it comes my way, I would make it life and death, who goes to the box social. Because most of the productions of Oklahoma that one sees, everyone's about like 35 or 40. And you think, why do you care who you go to the party with? You haven't got a wife and kids at home, get a life, you know? So I really always wanted to do this one young. And beautifully and quite coincidentally, Daniel Evans, who is our Lord and Master here, asked me to do it. And he said, you want to do Oklahoma? And I said, you had me at Oak. So yes is the answer. So two things I've tried to do with the production, which you will either see or about to see or maybe agree with, is first of all to make it about youth, about hope. It's about a brand new state, it's about beginnings, it's about a part of history where things were changing, where lands were being colonized, and about experience for the first time, but also about experiencing love for the first time, sex for the first time, and not knowing what that means and getting it wrong. Asking the wrong person to the party in this show ends in a death in Act 2, spoiler alert. That's what happens. So it's about discovery for the first time. Very important.
I mean, I think that was one of the things that was so thrilling the minute it started, that you believed all of those stories, that actually a young girl and a young boy, they don't quite know how to flirt with each other. They get it terribly wrong. And it's the older characters that go, she really likes you. Yeah. And the audience, of course, falls about.
They do get it wrong, just as I did, just as we did, yeah? the wrong person saying, I don't like you, to the person you really like, saying yes to go out to the party, the person you think, why did I say yes to that? So these people are discovering about all sorts of things as they go. And that, I think, is my first thing about what the show is about. And the other one is Chichester. This is a theatre, as Kate has pointed out, I love working in. And to all of us who work in the theatre, this is a special gig. This is our Glyndebourne, you know, it's a special gig. We're really happy to work here. And I've always loved this stage. So I decided early on to make a show that could only really exist in this theatre.
Have you told everybody else that?
No chance of transferring this anywhere else. And as you can see, well, you probably can't see, it goes way back, way beyond there.
Yes, you've used the whole dock, haven't you?
The whole dock
it's
and
fantastic.
beyond. And rather pleasantly, for people sitting at the sides, there's a massive depth as well. So the show at the sides is a different show, but it's still a show about expanse because it's about space.
And the new state of, you know, Oklahoma that's just coming into being.
Goes on forever.
Yeah.
And even in this environment, this community, your neighbours are 20 miles away. And you meet once a year maybe at box socials or church on a Sunday. So it's all about space. So everything is huge, and the corners, it's not as high as an elephant's eye. We had it cut down after the first preview.
Was it higher? Did you really have to cut?
We got an elephant in to check.
Yes, of course. Famous Chichester elephant.
Exactly right. No, it's in the room. It was too high, so you can see me fine, can't you, here? Yeah. Because we were horrified that people had bought row A thinking best seats in the house.
Yes. Well, it's immersive theatre, isn't it? Obviously, yes,
right,
exactly.
Yes.
That sort of thing. So when you're, you know, you said you started as a rehearsal pianist for this, and you have the brilliant Nigel Lilly here, and everything about it, the set, the design, the choreography is fantastic, and it's a new staging. But when you finally then come, after, no offence, all these years, you're slightly older than you were in your first job, did you have a clear vision of what you wanted it to look like? And just talk a little bit about what the new staging is, because obviously there's very famous choreography within it, but how much, you know, latitude do you have?
Well, on this particular piece, thankfully, there is total latitude. All the estate were asked after was what Chichester were after, which is a staging and a version that is not crazy, and not, for example, men don't play women, women don't play men. There's been quite a lot of that in America recently, reimagining of things. This is what you might call straight, in that I play every word, I play every note. However, this staging, I love theatre that pulls surprises, and there are many surprises that come out of this set, and many things which take you by surprise. So I wanted to make it fresh. So I've gone back to the text and looked at it very carefully and worked out what it actually means and how it actually goes, trying to get rid of history. And I have to say again, having young people involved really helps that. Yeah. 3 of our cast are still at college and are graduating.
So this is their first...
their professional debut. And a lot of them are, you know, they're all really, really young. Yeah. And that makes a massive difference to me.
Is that partly because they don't have the legacy of having seen that version or that version or that version? So for them, this is their show?
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, for me, it's a question of energy. Yeah. My cast, the people I'm working with, when we have a lunch break, they're off playing football in the... and as you see, they work themselves to the bone. They dance and they sing, and they... particularly the ensemble, they play characters with immense precision and care, and then they run around town and they go off, you know, they have immense energy, and at no point have I asked them to do something that they will say, oh, really? Everything's yes. And that's very, very helpful to me.
And one of the things that, I mean, those of you who've seen it and those of you who have the treat in store, the big dance numbers, it is so wonderful, as you say, just for once, to have a proper old-fashioned musical where people do the dance routines. Yes. It isn't all done with lights and, beams and...
The dance routines are very important to this, historically as well. the history of Oklahoma is very interesting, but one of the things that was new is one of the first times when a whole sequence of thoughts or ideas was told entirely in dance. And there's a sequence towards the end of Act 1, which is strange because after this, they're called dream ballets in the trade, and all dream ballets were after this in Act 2. So you'll always find in Carousel, in King and I, all dream ballets, and West Side Story has a dream ballet. They're all in Act 2. This one's in Act 1. And what it depicts is our heroine, Laurie's, difficulty of deciding which of the two men, because as we said earlier, she's made some bad choices. The man she wants to go with, she said no to. The man she doesn't want to go with, she said yes to. But I think it's more complicated than that. I think part of the man she said yes to, she's attracted to and doesn't know why or how. And part of the man who hasn't said yes to, she also wants, but she doesn't know why or how. She doesn't know anything, any more than any of us did or maybe do. And kids, young people, just know nothing, and they think know everything, and they get it wrong. So she has, you may ask why I think about the show now in my 60s as opposed to in my 20s. It's just that. I can look back on me at that age, and I thought I knew everything about the world. Does that ring a bell? And I realize now that I didn't, but that's also fine. So there's a big ballet sequence in which she has two things on her head, one of which is Curly, the handsome cowboy, and the other which is Judd, the interesting farmhand. And I've done this on purpose in two colours. Actually, I think of these things in primary colours. So in that ballet, the first half is pink, the second half is red. The first half is an operetta, if you like, and we've lit it like an operetta. We have flowers and bridesmaids and happy marriage stuff. There's a swing. So it's all gorgeous, sort of Fragonard-scented romance. Yeah. And the second half is much more sexual,
kind of Moulin Rouge.
Moulin Rouge, but like down and dirty. Yeah. And both of those things are in Laurie's mind. Yeah. She's a romantic, but she's also an awakening, normal, sexual girl. Funny enough, you talked about what was modern about it. Reading a lot about young people nowadays, what I read about is knife crime. I read about people who can't have relationships because they've been exposed to pornography early on. I read about drug abuse. And all of those, word for word, are in this show. There's a man who looks at pin-ups instead of at real girls. He brings a knife to a party and it ends in tragedy. A peddler comes through, crossing lines, as it were, selling drugs, amongst other things. The elixir of Egypt, which is some sort of hallucinogenic thing, where if you take it, you pass out and have bad, acid trips, as it were. Yes,
which makes sense of the ballet.
Yes.
When it's seen in that context,
yes.
which
it's
is
a bad
powerful.
Drug trip. So I'm not making up any of these things, and I'm not adding in a sort of directorial way where it's about young people and knife crime and porn and drugs. It's about knife crime and porn and drugs. Yes. It just is, and that's how it's written.
I look forward to seeing that headline in the Chichester Observer.
It is what the writers have written, and I haven't invented any of it, and anyone who's seen it will, I hope, agree with me.
And actually, I had never noticed, and I think it's because you don't emphasise it, but I had never noticed so much emphasis on the new state, yes. The idea that they are the new people on the land, and leaving aside all the issues around that. But actually, that was very powerful as well, because that sense of, as you say, the new beginnings.
Oscar Hammerstein is the most inventive, creative book writer of musicals ever, and the cleverness he puts in his plays, the words he hides, it's amazing. The first words Aunt Ella says in the whole thing, if I wasn't so old and you weren't so young, first line, yeah. Yep, yeah. And old and young. The next line, Laurie says, you expect me to go to the party on your old horse? Oh, I see you've taken up with that old Cummins girl. Yeah. Old is in the first page 4 times, young 3 times. Yeah. And he does that throughout. There's a dream sequence at the end of Act 1, I've just described it. The word dream is plonked around the song before that, out of my dreams and into a dream, dream, dream. But even before that, everything's like a dream in Kansas City. In the Surrey, the Fringe on Top, you've got a dream worth of keeping. He plonks that word all the way through, cleverly. So when we go into that sequence, you, the audience, go, oh, it's the dream.
Yeah, yeah. And we're ready for it. We've been kind of trained.
Absolutely told. Yeah. I'll give you another example of that. The King and I, the first scene in King and I, our heroine, Anna, is talking to her son, and he says, is that the king? She said, no, the king's coming soon. Oh, that the king? No, that person's the king. Someone says, I'm not the king. The king. The word king is mentioned about 20 times in the first scene. The next scene, there's an empty stage and a man walks on, and we know it's the king. Yeah. Because the author has plonked it amazingly brilliantly. And I could go on. Sound of Music, mountains and singing, count those as well.
I hope we're hearing all the things that you're going to be doing next season and the season after. This is what we're hoping.
I've done both of those ones, but I'd love to do Sound of Music again.
I mean, just actually focusing on the words of it.
Yes.
One of the things that I think is so astonishing about this musical is that every song that starts, you go, oh, of course, that's from Oklahoma. It is a hit machine. Yes. It's quite extraordinary. What do you attribute the fact that so many of the songs have actually stepped out of the musical and are in common singing parlance, if you like? You know, a lot of people don't think, oh, people will think we're in love. I didn't realise that was in this show. You know, what is it that made these songs so transferable?
Well, there's a strange circle. Years ago, I did a show in Boston, at the Colonial Theatre in Boston, and I was able to walk out on the stage on which someone in 1943 went down stage and sang, oh, what a beautiful morning. And the audience went, oh, that's a nice song, never heard that before. So they were all new once. I think part of the dissemination, and maybe some of you are old enough to remember that the LP of this, we had it at home. Yeah. It was one of the first LPs of musicals that was very popular. So everyone knew it, and also they were hits.
Yes, so they were kind of, they lived outside of the show, didn't they?
But there's something about the correctness of it. And I think it's to do with a new relationship between Richard Rodgers and Oscar Hammerstein, who sort of fell in love with each other in the most platonic way you could possibly imagine.
That creative
and they knew each other, and
amazing.
They were both had enormous experience, and they were both world famous, and they got together, and it just glowed.
And one of the things maybe, I don't know if you'd say this, is that when I was looking at the history, so realising that it opened on Broadway during the war in 1943, and then it was the first American musical to come over to this country in 1947, so, you know, rationing all of the loss, the horror of that Second World War.
Actually, a little bit more than that. In 1943, America had just started to be at war, and had 1941 Pearl Harbor, and actually, what was America? It needed an identity.
Do you think that was it? It was kind of asking,
100%,
it was the American dream.
A nostalgic identity about looking back on how the country was formed nostalgically. I don't know if we have it. Actually, you get it. Look, here's a good example. Henry V, Laurence Olivier, Wartime, yeah? That's a historical view about how England was made, which happened during the war. And interestingly, Carousel, which is their next musical, is also set in fact, in Maine, in New England. So it's all about the creation of looking back and to redefine. And that's why it's such a huge hit, I think. At a time when America was being attacked by Japanese people, was fighting wars in countries they didn't feel they should be fighting in. Hasn't changed. That sort of it reestablishes an identity. And I think it's a national identity. And funnily enough, Oklahoma plays all over the world. It plays in Japan, and they say, this is fantastic. This is a show about us.
And the line right near the end, because of course Oklahoma itself as the song comes very late in the show, and it's the, you know, we are the land, we belong to that. And
more than that, the word Oklahoma is heard for the first time in the show when Curly goes, oh, Oklahoma, and everyone goes, oh, we haven't heard that name. Yeah. It's coined, if you like, in that song.
What is so extraordinary, I don't know if you're aware of this or if the company are aware of this, there are so many people in the audience being nudged and the person next to them saying, stop singing. Oh. Yeah. There's a lot of people singing along. In terms of you have directed and adapted and worked in so many different forms. What is the real challenge about an enormous show like this when you bring it from the rehearsal room onto the stage? Because it is bigger, isn't it, than simply moving a play?
Yes. It's huge. Funnily enough, rehearsals I think of as sort of fool's paradise. They're necessary, but what we're doing here is only just begun in the rehearsal room. And the hardest trick of all, for those of you who've tried directing, is to take the beating heart of what was in a rehearsal room and to get it on here before it dies. Yeah. And to fill this. I'd always planned this show for this space.
And you know this space, and that does make a difference.
I know this space, and I know how this relates to there, and that relates to that, just as you guys do, because you go here all the time, for the same reasons. And I find it a very emotional space. And I also find it epic. I think what works best on this space is big storytelling. Yes. Do you agree? It's sort of, I think that works best. It's built for, it's an epic space. It's built for...
It's built for ambition,
yes,
isn't it? I think all of us who are Chai people, or come here a lot, sometimes get a bit fed up with people who are a bit scared of this stage, so they shrink it. So, they don't really want this glorious space, the Olivier point, which is there, where he stood,
Well, funny enough, the best place on this stage is, in fact, up centre, by far. This is, down the apex here, the worst place on this stage, because I'm playing to a staircase for a start. So Jonathan Church really told me this, that this is a stage with two cross arches, left and right. And you don't play here, you play here, and then you play here, and you play diagonals. And that's a very interesting way of looking at it. And I've dared in this one with my company to play big distances apart.
When you do get in here, because there was... The summer was when you first arrived down here, so a lot of Chai people could hear you as we walked up and down the park, and that was rather glorious and wonderful. But when you do get in and you've got these beautifully choreographed big numbers, proper dance numbers, what happens if you realise that those bales are in the way, or actually that staircase is meaning that the balance between the two dancers there isn't... How do you actually cope with that?
There's only one life for a play, and that's in the theatre it's in. Everything else is in my imagination. So if something has to be moved or respaced, we do it. And very often, in a rehearsal room, the side of a stage is in fact a wall. So no one's going to go and stand next to a wall and sing, but in fact, that's where you have to be. So you have to open out all the time, particularly here. And another thing that I wanted to say was that the lovely thing about directing a show here is that you have to get an amazing team together. And I always think I think on the way here, it's like organising a bank robbery. So I have to get together the best getaway driver, safe cracker.
It's Ocean's 14.
Ocean's 14. I'm George Clooney. And the people that we've managed to get together are of an expertise that is remarkable. And they're people I've worked with for many, many years. So Mark Henderson lighting, and Paul on sound, and Brigitte's doing costumes, and these are all people with massive international careers.
And also I noticed when you look at the biographies, quite a few have worked here as well. Yes. And so it does mean that everything feels that it is as important as anything else. The lighting is as important as the sound, and the costumes are as important as the set. And
like I said, Chichester for us theatre folk is a special gig. It's a special job. And we all love being here, so that's why I'm able to attract great people around me, because we just like being here.
And we will be relatively quick this evening, ladies and gents, for the wonderful reason that there is a fight call rehearsal. So we will need to clear out in order to allow all of that to happen. And there's quite a lot of wonderful additional fighting, I would say.
Big fights. And fights are really hard on this stage. Fights, if you want to hide a punch, it's fine if we're flat on, but how do I hide a punch from these guys? Yeah. So we do quite a lot of, someone crosses here and you follow that eye and the punch goes there and things like that. They have to be very, very choreographed. And we have to rehearse them every evening because people are punching each other with knives.
It's health and safety, isn't it? Health and safety.
Yeah.
But looking at the fact that you'd always wanted to do this, and then Daniel Evans said to you, what about it? And then, hooray, it's happening. Is what you see what you imagined? Is it the show you wanted to do?
You know what? I don't often say this, but absolutely,
Is it?
really is. And I saw a couple of previews again. I thought, for better or for worse, this is exactly what I think it should be, which is this: a beautiful space which explodes. And that's what I think this piece is. It's about a safe place and which becomes unsafe. Yeah. And as you'll see when you see it, it's an amazingly beautiful set. And troubling, worrying, ugly, difficult to deal with things happen in that place. And at the end of it, the optimism that we talk about is really hard to achieve, because things happen in Act 2 which are unpleasant, ugly, and have all sorts of ramifications for now, to do with patriotism, nationalism, things that are tricky, you know, and people die, and people don't know how to deal with it because they're kids. So someone dies. So it's like a party where someone dies, and what do you do? And that's always what I'm after.
Yes, and that sort of sense of the restoration of hope at the end, though.
Yes,
yeah.
And hope is in itself very touching and moving for me. Again, it comes with being older. If you look at young people's hope, it moves me. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. With young people hoping for something, I find it very touching. Not because I know that it won't happen, it's because it's just lovely.
And the curtain call. Here, with a great show like that, the curtain call is part of what you have to choreograph and rehearse, isn't it? Yeah. Because we all want to say goodbye to them properly. We don't want them to just, you know, the metaphorical curtain to come down.
And actually, we want to say thank you to you properly as well. That's what I'm always trying to tell my actors, that curtain calls are actually, that's why we bow, to say we are lower than you because you pay our, some of you literally, pay our mortgages. Yeah. So it is just a thank you, that's all. But it has to be a glorious thing, particularly because this show ends really with a very sour, strange, odd, realistic. Terrible things happen, but Aunt Ella, who's Josie Lawrence plays, gives an amazing speech at the end, where she basically says, terrible things happen, and we can't ignore that, and you can't go on without acknowledging that people get ill, people die, people we love die. It's awful, but
you still feel, you know, they're a bit older and a bit wiser, but they're going to be okay. Yeah. That's the thing. I mean, those of you who have not seen it yet are in for an incredible treat. It is one of the most joyous things I've seen for a very long time, actually, and everybody came out last night humming and smiling and wanting to talk to other people, and I think everybody's going to be going up and down North Street singing.
My absolute hope is that it takes you from Chichester, nothing wrong with Chichester, but my hope is that during the run of this, during Act 1, you're actually here on the stage with us. Yeah. And then at the end of Act 1...
Maybe raining, but you've sent us out into the sunshine.
That's the idea.
Exactly. As I said, we need to finish really promptly because the stage management does need to make sure that people fight without actually hurting each other. I wish we could talk more. I would like to know everything else you're doing. You told us that you were not going to do the 2 musicals you mentioned, but of course we want to know what they are, which means that you will have to come back next year with something else. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeremy Sands.